After my divorce from Daniel's father, I didn't expect to keep any connection to that part of my life. I was sure the whole chapter was closed. The bitterness of the separation, the endless legal back and forth, and the silence that followed had all made it seem final. But then, one quiet Sunday morning, I received a call that would change everything. "Hey, it's Josh," the voice on the phone said. It took me a moment to register who it was. Josh, my former stepson. He had been just 16 when his father and I split. That had been 3 years ago. I hadn't seen or spoken to him since. His voice sounded tired, older, and uncertain. "I'm sorry to call like this," he said. I didn't know who else to talk to. I didn't ask questions. I told him to come over. When Josh showed up at my door, his eyes were hollow. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were rumpled, his hair unwashed. But what got me the most was the way he smiled when I opened the door, a half smile that said he was trying to hold himself together, barely. I ushered him inside, put on a pot of coffee, and tried to hide how shocked I was to see him this way. I remembered him as a happy kid, always joking, always with his earbuds in, nodding his head to some beat only he understood. Now, he was quiet, his eyes darting around like he wasn't used to being anywhere that felt safe. "Do you want to talk?" I asked gently. He looked down at his hands and said, "I've been living alone since Dad moved to Arizona. He left me the apartment and some money. I thought I could handle it, but I don't think I can." My heart ached. Daniel had never been a nurturing father, but leaving Josh alone to fend for himself, that was worse than I expected. "I haven't been to class in weeks," Josh continued. "I'm behind on rent. And I sit there all day. Sometimes I don't eat. I stare at the wall. I can't explain it." "You don't have to," I said. "You're not alone anymore." I offered him the guest room. At first, he resisted. "You don't have to do this," he said. But I reminded him that I still cared. He wasn't just some kid I knew in passing. I had helped raise him for 6 years. Those years didn't just disappear. Over the next few weeks, I started to see glimpses of the old Josh. He cleaned up, started taking walks, even picked up his guitar again, something he hadn't touched since high school. One afternoon, I came home to the sound of him strumming and humming softly. It brought tears to my eyes. But it wasn't easy. There were still nights I heard him crying behind closed doors. Times when he'd snap over small things and then apologize 100 times over. He was battling something deep inside. I knew enough about depression to see the signs. And I knew that love alone wasn't always enough to fix it. One evening, after dinner, I sat down across from him and said, "I think you should talk to someone." He looked scared. "You mean like therapy?" "Yes. And I'll go with you if you want." To my surprise, he agreed. The first few sessions were awkward. He barely said a word. But slowly, with the help of a warm, patient therapist named Dr. Mayers, Josh began to open up. He talked about the loneliness, the fear of being forgotten, and how he felt like he didn't matter to anyone after the divorce. He even admitted that he had thought about giving up permanently. I cried when he said it. Quietly, so he wouldn't notice. But my hands were shaking. One day, after a particularly emotional session, Josh and I sat in the car outside the therapist's office. The sky was gray, the air heavy with summer rain. "I used to hate you after the divorce," he said suddenly. I looked at him, not knowing how to respond. "I thought you gave up on me. Like you left and didn't care. But now I see that wasn't fair. You didn't know Dad would shut me out. And I was just a kid, angry at the world. I never stopped caring," I whispered. "I just didn't know how to stay in your life without making things worse." He nodded, and we sat in silence. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when the worst has been spoken and there's nothing left but the truth. That summer turned into something I didn't expect, a chance to rebuild, to heal. We cooked meals together, watched old movies, and even planted a small garden in the backyard. Josh started volunteering at the local music center, teaching guitar to kids. I saw color returning to his face, light in his eyes. One afternoon, he came home grinning. "I got offered a part-time job at the center," he said. They want me to help run the teen workshops. That's amazing, I said, hugging him tight. He paused and added, I wouldn't have made it here without you. I just gave you a place to land, I replied. You did the hard part. But I knew it wasn't just a place to land. It was something deeper, connection, belief, and quiet love that didn't need a name. I hadn't given birth to Josh, and I wasn't married to his father anymore, but in every way that mattered, he was still my son. Months passed. Josh continued therapy. He even re-enrolled in college. He moved out the following year, not because he was running, but because he was ready. He found a small apartment near campus and decorated it with hand-me-down furniture and second-hand records. I helped him pick out curtains and a rug. We laughed about how domestic he'd become. Every Sunday, he came over for dinner. It became a tradition. One that never felt forced. One evening, as we sat eating spaghetti and watching the sunset from my back porch, he said, You saved me. I shook my head. No. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you were worth saving. Josh smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in what felt like forever. And at that moment, I knew something had come full circle, not just in his life, but in mine too. The grief I had carried after the divorce had dulled. The pain of losing my place in a family had found its healing. And in that healing, something new was born, a bond not broken by names or paperwork or time. It was love. Real, unconditional, and quiet. The kind that sits with someone in their darkest hour and says, I see you. I won't leave. I didn't need to be his stepmother again. I was something else now. Someone who had shown up, stayed, and stood by him when he needed it most. And that, I realized, was what family truly meant.